Okay, welcome back. We are talking heart expansion today in The Biology of Kundalini by Jana, Dixon. I'm Stasia Bliss, and we are reading and discussing. If anything you have questions about, please leave a message in the comment section. And we do this just a little bit each video. So we're just chunking through it. Today we are on page 58, and she begins, thinking hard about subtle energy seems to lessen its influence, while just being seems to make its influence stronger. That's from Paul Pearsall in The Heart's Code. So she begins with that quote, thinking hard about subtle energy seems to lessen its influence, while just being seems to make its influence stronger. So I invite you just to be with me, just to allow yourself to hear the information and to feel it, because this whole book is a transmission. I mean, it's speaking very technically about the biology in our body, but there is the energy in the words too, because it's experiential. I use the term heart expansion to describe the escalation of the Kundalini heat and associated heart opening above the normal ecstasy of the initiated heart. For me, heart expansion lasts around 1 to 2 weeks and tends to coincide with new or full moons at any month of the year, and I still experience those pretty often. They are definitely more cosmically orchestrated rather than socio-stimulated, as you will notice other people going into altered states around the same time. So everyone's getting the influence. That's why we have the popularity of astrologers, many people at the same time feeling and going what is going on? It says, to a large degree, the movements of the sun, moon, seasons, and bodies within the solar system and the space, earth, weather influence our social dynamics as well. So again, the astrology. The heart, then the nervous system, are the first things to form in the human embryo. At 5 to 9 days, the heart begins to form, and the foundations for the fetal brain, spinal cord, and entire nervous system are set in place. By week 10, the heart is completely developed. The organism is developed within the field of the heart. As the dissolution process progresses, one can assume that the heart muscle itself is relaxed and made more permeable to energy, to the same degree that the neuromuscular skeletal is decontracted. So we're not in a contracted state. The neuromuscular is open again and receptive, and the heart cells are more permeable and sensitive to energy, okay? The heart, hi babe, I'm just reading again. The heart being a holographic representation of the entire neuromuscular skeletal system, it is a part of it. It's a part of the holographic representation of the entire neuromuscular skeletal system. As the heart starts to experience this new space, it would go through contractions and expansions, which in fact feel like gravity warping and crushing. And she quotes from Joseph Chilton Pearce, about 60 to 65% of all the cells in the heart are neural cells, which are precisely the same as in the brain. So you have brain cells in the heart, functioning in precisely the same way, monitoring and maintaining control of the entire mind, brain, body, physical prowess, as well as direct, unmediated connections between the heart and the emotional, cognitive structures of the brain. Secondly, the heart is the major endocrine glandular structure of the body. So of all the endocrine glands, the heart is the main. Thirdly, affecting the body, brain, and mind, the heart produces 2.5 watts of electrical energy at each pulsation, creating an electromagnetic field identical to the electromagnetic field around the earth. So in effect, we are little Earths. The electromagnetic field of the heart surrounds the body from a distance of 12 to 25 feet outward, right? And encompasses power waves such as radio and light waves, which comprise the principal source of information, which the body and brain build our neural conception, perception of the world. So we're constantly taking information into our heart field about the world around us through light, through sound, through vibration, and we're processing it through the heart, and our nervous system is responding. Like, it's how it's keeping us, sitting or laying or walking, like, because we're interpreting all of this stuff in through our heart wave. Joseph Chilton Pierce says the EMF of the heart, the electromagnetic frequency of the heart, can be measured up to 15 feet from the body, yet the immeasurable scalar healing energy field emerging from the heart would perhaps also be formed in a torus shape. Toroidal is donut shape, but this field would be many times larger than the electromagnetic field itself. The metamorphic awakened heart is more sensitive and responsive to the vibratory conditions of the body and the environment. And the body-mind is dismantled and rebuilt within this new, greatly expanded and amplified heart field. Good morning. Heart expansion occurs along with intense love, bliss, and weakness of arms. Okay, you might be distracted. This is intense information that people are listening to, but you're a cutie pie. Maybe it's helping, I don't know. The heart expansion and grounding are also associated with fatigue because the heart's field becomes so huge, it seems like it pulls one into the ground. So there can be that heavy gravity feeling. This grounding is actually caused by temporary parasympathetic dominance, which inflates the blood vessels and lowers the blood pressure. So like when you feel like you can't get off the ground, you're just like, I'm grounded, I'm so floppy and heavy.
That's how I feel in the morning every day.
Yeah, so you might get a little Kundalini in the sleep, and then when you wake up, you're so heavy because you've reconstructed and you've grown a little in the night. The grounding can be so severe, it's really difficult to put one foot in front of the other in order to walk. This fatigue is dealt with through grounding the entire spine by laying on one's back on the grass, if you have grass. Also by walking on grass, repolarizing around running water and in nature, eating greens, and avoiding stimulants. So that's all going to help the grounding energy. Whatever aids grounding and repolarization will reduce fatigue. At this time, one is intuitively called to spend as much time as possible outside, under the open sky, and in nature, because the electromagnetics of this event need to occur in communion with the planetary field and nature's energy fields. So it is definitely important to get outside, to commune with that electromagnetics in the atmosphere, will support your heart expansion. Being inside buildings during an awakening, you'll feel cut off from your true nature, and the heart expansion will demand that you be outside. The metamorph proceeds when we are connected to Earth's energy and the sun. You could say that we lose our soul in buildings. After the body has grounded, the heart, now freed, soars out of the body and as though painfully breaking through the chest. To relieve the pain of expansion, one needs to thump the thymus gland on the sternum like an ape. This relieves the pressure there. So if you're having heart expansion, the thymus gland under the sternum wakes up significantly. This could be part of the huge expansion and energetics of the chest that's felt during awakening. She says, I have yet to scientifically verify this, but I'm sure that the thymus is retraining white blood cells in their transmutational functions. So that's one of its jobs. Entrainment represents the integration or harmonization of various oscillations, creating a blending of various rhythms. Okay. The amplified heart field and the associated heart-brain entrainment is probably the cause of the increase in ESP, insight, higher states of awareness, and supersensory abilities that are prevalent at this time. So just saying that entrainment between these cells that are coming online together can enhance your ESP for a great deal. And I think I've shared with you that I was having that super intensified for a while, but it was almost too scary. I felt like I could hear people's thoughts as if they were in my head. That was an interesting time of my awakening. So the amplified heart and the opening of new areas of the brain or the new synergy, our parts working in greater unison, leads to a melting of the former being and a surrender to the bliss of transformation. The morphic field around us is generated at this time of transformation. It's probably the largest that it will ever be in your life during your transformation, she's saying. It may be a major factor in outer body experiences in ESP that this field just extends and we can feel more and be more during an awakening. Extrasensory means that the senses are so amplified that it seems like one's consciousness is all the way out there, that you're able to touch into everything. One's sense of self is so radically different during Kundalini, I call it supersensorial, or experiencing the supernal realm. There is such an unprecedented relaxation of the heart, muscles, and the nervous system that one no longer feels confined to the body, and one's feeling of self seems to extend beyond the body, allowing us to feel others as if from a distance. She says, I could never figure out if the remote sensing of special individuals in our home range was due to these supernal senses or whether it was due to the amplified precognition of our own timeline. Perhaps it's a bit of both, having celestial super senses in both space and time. So she says now, in a healthy individual, a delicate balance is achieved between vasoconstriction by endolethin, calcitonin, etc., these enzymes she mentioned the other day, on the one hand, and the vasodilators, nitric oxide, prostacycline, etc., on the other. So the hormones that go with each. These two modes of expansion, contraction, constitute the Kundalini path as it hyperboles from one extreme to the other, giving this expansion, contraction, gravity warping effect. It's apparent that expansion phase, where there's an influx of spirit, a relaxation, and a euphoria, are associated with the circulation of vasodilators. So even your blood vessels are open, right? The dilation of the blood vessels lowers blood pressure and increases fatigue. Heart expansion and gravity expansion periods are always associated with fatigue and the urge to ground, right? Some of the agents that facilitate this vasodilation would be histamine, serotonin, acetylcholine, nitric oxide, and even endorphins. Studies found that acetylcholine, nitric oxide, I'm rereading that line. Studies found that the arteries in an actively contracted state were dilated in a dose-dependent manner by enkephalins and morphine, due perhaps to the presence of opiate receptors in the vessel walls. So in an actively contracted state are dilated due to the opiate receptors. Some of the agents that facilitate vasodilation. I'm not totally following this. Studies found that arteries in an actively contracted state were dilated. So they're contracted, but they're open in a dose-dependent manner, like they're looking for something, right? So they're looking for the morphine, maybe just because the receptors are there. Another vasodilator is adenosine, which plays an important role in biochemical processes such as energy transfer, as adenosine triphosphate, ATP, and adenosine diphosphate, ADP. So that's the energy, right? The stuff that our cells use for energy. As well as in signal transduction, a cyclic adenosine monophosphate, CAMP. If energy production goes up in the mitochondria during Kundalini, adenosine might be an important promoter of the expansion phase. Careful, I almost kicked that. When adenosine enters the circulation, it causes an increase in coronary vasodilation. In order to bring the body back to equilibrium after the expansion phase, the sympathetic nervous system kicks in to bring about vasoconstriction. So again, the nervous system, I'm just reading to here. The nervous system goes between being stimulated and relaxed. Stimulated and relaxed. Relaxed is the heart opening. Stimulated is that receiving the upgrades, right, and clearing us out. So we're vacillating between this. This contraction phase is associated with gravity crushing panic, hypervigilance, desire for movement, and emotional stress. The agents of this phase include vasopressin, adrenaline, catecholamine, epinephrine, norepinephrine, and dopamine, antihistamines, and caffeine. These serve to increase heart rate, blood pressure, and raise blood glucose. Endolithine is a vasoconstricting peptide that plays a key part in vascular homeostasis. It is one of the strongest vasoconstrictors currently studied. Found in smooth muscles and endolithial cells, it is instrumental in increasing the discharge of sodium through urine and the production of urine by the kidneys. It stimulates nitric oxide, NO, release to redilate vessels and mediate vascular homeostasis. Overproduction of endolithine can cause lung artery hypertension. Prostacyclin is a prostaglandin produced in the walls of blood vessels that acts as a vasodilator and inhibits platelet aggregation. It is used in the treatment of primary pulmonary hypertension. So she's just going into some of the details of the dilation of the heart, when there's expansion, contraction, what is happening. I'm finishing up with prostaglandins, and then we'll finish today. So prostaglandins are another important factor in the regulation of vascular homeostasis. Prostaglandins are a large group of fatty acids that regulate cellular processes where they are produced. They are not stored, but are produced as needed by cell membranes in virtually every body tissue. So when the body tissues require prostaglandins, then they are made and they help with vascular homeostasis, but we don't store them. They may also act as messengers for hormones. So when we need homeostasis in the body, the prostaglandins, she's saying, are part of that. Hey, like, we need more hormones, so that's part of that signal. In that the hormones bind to the cells, increasing the level of prostaglandins, which activate specific cell processes. They participate in a wide range of body functions, such as the contraction and relaxation of smooth muscles, and this is why they're indicated, the dilation and constriction of blood vessels, control of blood pressure, modulation of inflammation, glandular secretions, and the CA movement. So all of that is dependent on prostaglandins. So definitely an increase of them during an awakening. One such substance which stimulates contraction of the uterus and is used clinically to induce labor. Prostaglandins also control the substances involved in the transmission of nerve impulses, participate in the body's defense against infection, regulate the rate of metabolism and cell growth in various tissues. Histamine stimulates prostaglandin release, which increases vascular permeability. So remember, the permeability factor. Histamine stimulates prostaglandin release, increasing vascular permeability, producing a range of effects on brain function and metabolism. So during that permeability, things can get through that wouldn't normally, so the inflammation or the allergic reaction could happen when you're in awakening. So that's why the nourishment is so important. That's why it's so important to be in preparatory phases, to do things soothing for your nervous system, eat the right foods for you. Several prostaglandins have been shown to induce fever, possibly by participating in the temperature regulating mechanism in the hypothalamus. So trying to find homeostasis and maybe making one hotter if there's something that it feels needs to be burned out, right? The fact that aspirin and other non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs have been shown to inhibit prostaglandin synthesis may account for their usefulness in reducing fever and inflammation. Okay, excuse me, I'm losing my voice anyway. So that is where we're going to end today. Just all that about the heart expansion and tying it into what she's already talked about. So we'll just get on tomorrow with it. Tomorrow we're going to discuss the skeletal muscles, and then we'll be to the end of this particular section. Thanks for joining me. Remember, you can read it online at lulu.com. We are in the Biology of Kundalini by Jana Dixon. There is more support for you on this YouTube page to do yoga, to practice bringing life force into your body, to work on your breathing, to meditate, all to support you during your awakening. Okay, thanks for joining me. We'll see you next time.